This video was originally an exclusive live stream for our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter and get videos like this, as well as other panels and exclusive content, then check out the link to our Patreon in the description.
Hi, I'm Tim Hardy. I'm hosting this particular session today for Spotlight Indie. So I've basically been press ganged into going in front of the camera, kicking and screaming. Normally I'm responsible for, as part of the Spotlight Indie team, for their Patreon and their web content, but every now and again I do appear in front of the camera. So yeah, I'm a UK-based author, probably best known for writing the book behind me, which is Hall of Bones, which was a Spiffbo finalist a few years ago now. And I don't want to talk about how long ago that was because time's flying by. We've got Lauren MacRae here as our guest of honour to talk about all things trader related. So Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself a bit more and tell us what we've got to look forward to the next hour or so?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, hi everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here. I am a fellow Spiffbo finalist, same year as Tim.
The best year.
How we met. Yeah, 7 was the best year. So my name is Lauren. I'm a British fantasy author. I write under the name L.L. MacRae. My books usually contain dragons, world-shattering magic, and the hope we all carry even in the darkest times. I live in a tiny little village in the UK, in the Oxfordshire countryside, so I get to daydream about dragons all day. But when I'm not writing about them, I make the majority of my author income at in-person events, Comic-Cons, book fairs, things like that. So I'm a full-time author. I've been full-time since 2019. And my approach is very topsy-turvy. So this workshop is going to be all about how I've made selling my books at events work. Whether that will work for you, I don't know, but hopefully there's some nuggets of information that you can take here, things to be aware of, maybe some things you didn't know about. And I will do my best to offer any advice and tips to any comments and questions that we have in the chat while we're live.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you've got any particular comments or got any questions you want us to home in on, obviously we're going to have a live session, so you can drop those comments in and we'll do our best to cover all of those. If not, we're probably just going to chat through. I should also mention this is a video just for our Patreon supporters, so if you are watching this, thank you very much. If you're watching this later on and it's not live, thank you very much as well. You know, we really do value your support, and it's making some really interesting and exciting things happen for Spotlight Indie and also for in Lauren's camp as well. So, you know, we are incredibly grateful for your support. I'll have a quick look. I don't know whether we have got any immediate questions coming in. So shall I just kick off with one to get us going, and then we'll sort of see what happens. I suppose my first question was going to be, how do you actually choose which events you attend? Because there's actually quite a lot of them nationwide, aren't there? So sort of what's your selection process like? Look.
Yeah, it's very hard because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm a bit sort of intimidated by the idea of doing it. So you want to start with something that's more kiddie pool rather than jumping straight into the deep end, which does make sense. I didn't do that. I did start with the big one, for better or worse, but that, you know, I like to make things difficult for myself. So I would always recommend starting with somewhere where you are comfortable. So somewhere local that you can travel to easily, so you don't have to worry about long days of traveling. You don't have to worry about hotel costs and things like that. So if you just look in local newspapers, magazines, Facebook groups, anything for local events that are being advertised around you, because then they're going to have quite decent footfall as well. You don't really want to go to such a small event that nobody has ever heard of it. So very often organizers will put in some sort of marketing push to let people know that what's going on, where it is, when it is. So there might be street flyers, there might be posters in local coffee shops and bakeries and things like that. So I would recommend starting with somewhere local that you can get to. Mm-hmm. If you're driving, then, you know, somewhere where you know where you can park, or if you have to take public transport, then somewhere where you can get there very easily, you know the route. It's not super convoluted, it's not super expensive. I would also recommend popping by first, just as a consumer. Often these events tend to run annually or even 2 or 3 times a year. So if you're really, really unsure, I would just pop along first, just as a regular attendee. Have a look, see what it's like, what the feel of the place is like, what the atmosphere, the crowds. Is it something that you feel that you would be comfortable to be attending yourself? Or do you think it's too overwhelming? Or do you think it's too quiet and you want to start a little bit bigger? So doing your research before you kind of make the plunge is definitely worthwhile. And then you have to think about, why do you want to do these? Is it just to have some experience? Is it just to find some other local readers? Is it just to spread the word about your books? Or are you going to shift big quantities? Because depending on what your goals are will also depend on what events are good for you. If you go to your local bookshop as a local author, then that might just be a sort of a networking thing where you get to meet other readers and the staff, bookshop staff. But if you want to go to sell hundreds of books, then going to a very small bookshop probably isn't going to be very good for you. So I would try to identify what your goal is, your main goal. What would you like to do to end the day feeling happy? And then trying to find somewhere that meets that goal within a local area, within an hour or two, really. There are, as Tim said, there's like 1,000 of these. There's something going on every single weekend. It doesn't have to be a massive Comic-Con. It can be a local book fair. Independent bookshops do these. There are craft fairs and markets. Most sort of town squares, village halls, they tend to put on something, maybe at Christmas time, maybe a summer fete, that kind of thing. Schools are often looking for local businesses and local authors. So it really depends on what your goals are and how easily you can get to them. And online research is the best thing. I mean, Google is your friend, or talking to other authors or other traders that have been to these events as well. They'll often have a list of events that they're going to, so you can check them out and see if any kind of work for you.
Right. Yes, there's a lot of work. It's not just a case of rocking up there, is it? It's very much a case of doing research and a lot of planning behind it as well.
It does help to get some ducks in a row first, rather than just kind of jumping in without like the first idea of what to expect or what you want to get from it. I mean, it's the same when we do like regular sort of author events, things like Worldcon. It's like, what are you going there for specifically? And then you can kind of get the most out of it, rather than feeling, oh no, maybe I've wasted that day, or I've wasted that opportunity or something, and that's the worst feeling. So kind of figuring out what you want to do before you take the plunge really helps kind of focus and get you in the right mindset.
Cool. That's really helpful. When I was just going on to another sort of question, I suppose practically, and I guess you kind of answered this a little bit in terms of the size of the event, but how many books do you take? I think this is the eternal question for anybody doing their first sort of trading event. Is do I ram the car and then have all the effort of lugging them around the venue, or do I just take a handful and not try and sort of because there's obviously an outlay, isn't there, in terms of stock and that side of things as well. So you got any thoughts about how authors should approach that?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's the eternal question: how long is a piece of string? It also depends on what you write. Do you write in series, or do you write loads of standalones? And do you have fancy hardcovers, or do you have just kind of standard paperbacks and all these sorts of things that you want to consider? If you have a sequential series, I think most people that write fantasy or speculative fiction will have series with book 1, 2, 3 that you read them in order. If you have multiple books out in a series, then always bring more book ones than anything else, because that's where people are going to start. So it makes sense that if anyone is going to give you a go and not buy every book that you have, if they're going to buy just one, it's going to be the first one. So always bring more book ones than anything else, and then maybe half again as many book 2s and half again as many book 3s. If you just want to try it out, honestly, just bring book 1 and don't worry about the sequels. If you want to make it easier for yourself, I tend to find it's easy to sell when you just have one book, instead of having to explain, oh, well, it's a trilogy, or oh, it's a quartet, and oh, there are so many books out yet and so many not, because the more you have to kind of explain, the more overwhelming it can be for you and for them. So bringing just book 1s is always a good idea. A lot of people think, oh, I have to have a complete series to make it work. And that's true to some extent. And when you're talking about Facebook ads, it makes sense to have multiple books. But if you're thinking about the logistics of lugging around loads of books, having fewer books is easier for you. So I would bring book 1s, and then as many as you would comfortably sell and be happy with. So if you'd be happy to sell 10 books, bring those 10 books. If you want to sell more than that, bring more than that. But then a lot of the time at Comic-Cons and book fairs, it's a very different audience to your sort of reader who's just browsing Amazon. A lot of people go to Comic-Cons having saved up money for it. They want to look for something special. They want to find something they wouldn't find elsewhere. So if you do have a hardback, particularly a shiny one with, some gilding or spot UV or anything that makes it a little bit more deluxe, there will be an audience for that too, because they will buy it specifically because it looks shiny, not necessarily because they know you or they know your series. We've seen the rise of special editions. There's a reason for it. So I would always bring, I would say, half as many of those. So if you're bringing, say, 50 regular paperbacks, bring 25 special editions, and you'll probably shift all of those special editions, as long as it's a number that you're happy with. Like if you only bring 5 and you think, oh, would have liked to have sold more, then bring more than 5. But I would say just half as many as your standards. And again, that does depend on how are you getting there. Are you driving, or do you have to cart them around on a bus or a train? Because that's going to impact things too. And bringing a helper if you can, just to ease the arm load is always a good idea.
So you advise to bring a minion as well. I hadn't even thought about that. I kind of imagined it as being a solo effort, really.
Yeah. A minion, a glamorous assistant, a child who can rope in, just a second pair of hands, because you get a bit of moral support, and then, when it's a bit quiet, or, if it's not super busy, then you have someone there to, keep morale up. But then when things do get busy, then you have a second pair of hands to help with bagging orders, with talking to people, and just kind of help carry the weight quite literally when you're loading in books.
Yeah, many hands to make light work and all that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Sorry, you've got a live question coming in from the audience.
Oh, Rika, yes.
Rika, okay, you're obviously familiar. So do you want to handle this one then, Lauren?
Yeah, of course. And one day I will get your name right. That's the closest I feel like I've come to it so far. I met you at a local book fair, and your one paragraph pitch definitely was the reason I bought your books. How do you come up with that? Yeah, that's a really good question, and thank you so much again for supporting me at that book fair and then becoming a patron. It's been really, really wonderful getting to know you. I get it right, yay. I'm learning. She can be taught. So it's kind of it's difficult when you're at a book fair and there's 1,000 shiny books to choose from. Or if you're at Comic-Con and there's lights and costumes and all these collectible things, it's really difficult to kind of stand out. And much like, Tim, you'll be familiar with this. When you're creating a book cover, you're trying to have a cover that represents the story and captures the tone and the theme, but B, you want a cover that stands out on Amazon as a thumbnail, right? So having a pitch that you say to someone at an in-person event is essentially the live equivalent of that, the in-person equivalent of that. And you have a very small amount of time to see if anyone is interested, because you don't want to waste their time. They don't want to look at something they're not interested in. So coming up with a way to very, very quickly illustrate the tone and the type of book that you're trying to sell is really helpful for that. I think as indie publishers, we have to do a lot of marketing. So I feel like we should all be able to have some sort of elevator pitch, whether that's a couple of lines, like distilling the blurb, or whether it's a couple of tropes or archetypes that people will be like, oh, yes, I understand that. Tim, you write Norse-inspired fantasy. So immediately that's the beginning of a pitch. So you're immediately going to have people say, oh, yeah, I like that. Or, oh, no, that's not my cup of tea, which helps. So I would kind of just expand on that a bit. So what I tend to talk about are the top 3 things that my books include. So at the particular book fair that I was at, I just had one of my series, and I pitch it as dragons, airships, and sky pirates. So immediately, if you enjoy reading fantasy, if that's the kind of thing that makes you want to read more. And I think because we have to sell our books as indie publishers, we have to do that with our blurb and with our marketing and social media appearance. So kind of porting that to a book fair scenario is kind of like how I did that. If you think about what sells your books, what do you talk about when you're, passionately explaining your books to someone in a really quick way? That's essentially your elevator pitch. And you don't want to go on and on and on, because you just want to be like, dragons, airships, sky pirates, yay, nay. If yay, you get to read the back, and then you can make the decision when you've read more, because all you want people to do is decide whether or not they would like to know more. And the book will sell itself if you've written a good blurb for it. So your pitch is really just to gauge interest. And I think that's being able to do that and adapting on the fly. Like you could do like the morning or the first couple of hours saying one thing, and then literally do like an A/B test and then change it to something else and see if the reaction is better, is worse. And there are so many variables at events, it's hard to like definitively say, yes, this pitch worked better than that pitch, but it keeps it creative. It stops you saying the same thing over and over all day, and then you get to vary it up and kind of get a feel for how people are leaning and what they want to say.
Yeah, so I suppose it's like audience identification, isn't it? You're simply signaling really strongly what it is you're selling, and
absolutely,
not every reader is right for every author, are they? So it's about, I suppose, trying to cut through that. And you're right, we've all got our elevator pitches. I think that I'm sort of dipped my toe into sort of live sales a couple of times, and the danger is like you just keep banging on to this poor person who has no interest whatsoever. You're trying to sell them. I don't know how do you, but obviously if they glaze over or walk away, I guess you've got it wrong. But your advice there is shorter is better, basically.
Absolutely. And I get it. It's a bit nervy, like, especially if you haven't done it before. I mean, I still get a bit nervous, like the first hour of any event, I'm just like pacing and I'm nervous and I'm like, what if somebody decides that I'm a hack author and I can't do this? And why am I, like, I still have that like imposter syndrome. So experience never gets rid of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's when we're nervous, I think there's an inclination to just ramble and speak out of nervousness, and then you make a situation where you're stood there digging the hole even deeper, and you're like, I should stop, but you keep talking, and then it happens. So I would say don't beat yourself up when that happens, because we all do it. But shorter is absolutely better, and just try and clamp down on the urge, because if you imagine you're the one wandering around, maybe looking for a book, maybe just having a browse, and you've got someone like talking your ear off, even if you were interested, sometimes that's enough to be like, okay, but not right now. So keep it short, keep it simple, trust that pitch is enough, because if somebody is interested and hasn't really said anything, you can always be like, would you like to have a look, and physically hand them the book. And then it's entirely the ball is in their court. So you can just stand back, you can fiddle with a pen, you can pace, you can adjust something on your table, so you don't feel like you're just standing at them and staring at them, like waiting to do something. So short and simple, hand them the book, and then just shut up. And if they don't like it, then it's not awkward, because they'll just say thank you very much and be on their way. But if they do like it, then you can both be really awkward book kindred spirit people and talk about how much you like fantasy and dragons and all of that kind of thing. But then it's a warmer pitch at that point, instead of being super awkward and one-sided.
And I think either outcome is fine. I think it's important to recognise that it's not like a personal disaster if your pitch doesn't resonate with that particular browser, because they might never have bought your book, no matter how cheap it was, no matter what you said, because you're just not for them, basically.
Exactly. And that's the big thing. We want, as authors, we want the best people to find our books. I don't want to sell 1 million copies to people that don't really like what I write, because that's not going to be nice for any of us. You want to find like your people, your audience, who absolutely adore the kind of stories you want to tell. So like by hearing some no's, that's fine. That means the yeses you get are going to be that much more enthusiastic, which I don't know, depends if that's what you want or not. But for me, I think that's better.
Cool. You touched on something before that.
This has been a preview of one of our Patreon exclusive workshops. If you'd like to watch the rest of this workshop or find even more exclusive content on our Patreon, then the link is in the description.